Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We have another exciting episode today. But before I get started, I must, of course, say hello to Jamie. How's it going, my friend?
Going well, going well. Glad to be here always.
Wonderful. And I really am super excited about this one today. We're going to be diving into a topic that many of us can relate to. It's our relationship with the addictive nature of ultra processed foods and how to take back control. But instead of fighting this addiction like we all do, we're going to talk about how to make it your friend. So, hashtag plot twist there. Yes, you heard that right. Your friend. This may sound counterintuitive, but we are going to tell you how to play nice with your addiction. Would you be surprised to hear that your addiction is just trying to keep yourself safe, sparing you from any level of pain? That's right. The addiction's job is to provide comfort in the fastest way possible. But unfortunately, since the addiction doesn't have intelligence, it's incapable of understanding consequences. So since it doesn't think long term, it really just is designed to execute one job, one function, and it can literally only think one step down the road. And so in a backwards way, it's just trying to help us.
Agreed. When I think about, the fact that, okay, all of that is true and we still have to have a life. So how, since our addiction sort of goes with us and our addictive behaviors go with us wherever we go, it really can be this process that kind of shows up at the most inconvenient times.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about a few of those, and we're going to provide some ideas on how to handle these conundrums with the least amount of damage possible. First, we're going to break down what we mean by sort of, addictive behaviors around ultra processed foods or the effects of ultra processed foods on our bodies. So these foods are examples of these foods are basically factory produced
Mm-hmm.
foods, quote unquote, I'm air quoting right now, foods that look like snack foods, look like ready to eat, or frozen meals. They can look like sugary drinks, packaged goods that are convenient and tasty. But because of their ingredients, they're addictive. So here's the deal. If they have an ingredient list on the back, they are processed packaged foods. Now, I'm not saying that every food with an ingredient list is a demon food. I'm not saying that, but 90% of it is. Let's be
Mhm.
honest.
What do they say if there's more than five ingredients, it for
Pretty
sure
much.
is, but some
Pretty
things,
much.
like canned tuna and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah,
Processed.
exactly. So again, things that have minimal ingredients and ingredients, more importantly, that you can pronounce and you know what
Yeah.
they are without having to consult your phone or call a chemist. Those are those are foods that are okay. But if not, if you've got to, research something or look up the word on the back of a package or a can or a bottle, chances are you don't need to be eating it.
Mhm.
And the reality is these are chemicals, and chemicals are addictive to our bodies. So it's very important to understand that there's no fault here. There's nothing wrong with you. Your body is acting exactly the way it should act in response to chemicals being put into it.
Yeah.
It is the same, this exact same as chemicals in, as far as the chemical reactions in our bodies are the exact same as we have to drugs, to alcohol. Now, drugs and alcohol are, you obviously have a much deeper, higher reaction to those chemical compounds.
Mhm.
But to think that foods, drinks, additives, colors, preservatives are not chemicals that our bodies respond to is wrong. They are chemicals that we respond to in addictive ways. And
Mhm.
there is no human on the planet that can resist it. And it doesn't matter because, your mom upset you when you were 5. It doesn't matter that you have some kind of, background in certain grief or pain or something like that. These chemicals are still chemicals in your body. And when you get these chemicals out of your food supply and out of your body, you're able to have a much more authentic response to food than if you kept them in.
Yeah.
So again, if you think about the dopamine impact the dopamine response, right? This is the response that I'm talking about constantly. The dopamine response here, that's something that we not only we're wired as humans to receive dopamine in the brain, but the dopamine response from chemical laden foods is exponentially higher than it would be with regular single ingredient or minimally processed, minimal ingredient foods. So again, it's not so much about fearing dopamine, that which is in the food behaviors and food abuse world. We can get caught up in thinking that dopamine is the enemy. Dopamine is not the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
It's about understanding the dopamine response is exponentially higher than what it would be if we were not consuming these drug-like foods or food-like drugs, depending on how you look at it. And the reason that these foods even came into existence is really because of the tobacco industry and the fact that they, once the jig was up with cigarettes in the 1950s and 60s, they realized very quickly that they had to pivot because they had an awful lot of money and production plants and marketing and infrastructure invested. These companies had a ton invested all over the country and the world, basically addicting people to cigarettes. So they had to change that model that they had from cigarettes to something else, and they had to do it quickly. And many of these tobacco companies had stakes in processed food manufacturing because it was a model that transitioned well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Manufacturing plant, model to model, it worked well. Well, when the rug was pulled out from under them from the lawsuit perspective in the 60s, Big Tobacco had to think very quickly, and they basically completely shifted all of their their product portfolios from tobacco products to food products. And they put all of their marketing power, all of their manufacturing power, all of their research and development power into developing foods that would keep people hooked just enough to keep buying them.
Yeah.
And it was all fueled under this guise of convenience and
Mm-hmm.
being, cutting edge and moving forward and making it,
Portability.
making it convenient for people to eat on the go and to get their food whenever they needed it. And this convenience factor was, I think, the biggest first step in the downfall of our health as Americans.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. And why all that is so important, I think, because without a full understanding of the background of how these ultra processed foods were created, it might be easy to feel guilty or ashamed about these cravings. But let's pause for a moment, because what if we looked at this addiction a little differently? Now, knowing what we know, how this was done to us without our permission, because that's one of the big factors too, is they engineered these foods to the highest bliss point, knowing that it would addict our brains without our knowledge. So that's the biggest part that is infuriating. So knowing how this was done to us without our permission, instead of viewing it as an enemy to fight, what if we considered it a friend with a message? Jamie likes to call these dashboard lights. So making friends with this force might just get us a little further down the road than fighting it and making it our enemy. Because after all, no one has ever hated themselves into recovery. So the bottom line is, instead of working on our recovery, we want to start working with our recovery. This loving, gentle approach allows us to reach a place of calm so much easier. And we know from history that a calm brain doesn't crave. This past summer, most weekends at my house would include swimming, pizza, watermelon at our house with our family. And so this was a struggle for me. This was very tempting, especially after being out at the pool and swimming and working hard. I wanted to join in the activities too, but I know how this game plays out for me. So, yes, it was tempting, but luckily I had the opportunity to know ahead of time what was coming.
Mhm.
So, something that I've been practicing with myself is this self-talk beforehand. I would tell myself, I trust you. I know you're going to take care of me. You don't have anything to worry about while everyone else is eating. You can relax now. I want you to feel safe. And so I was able to remind myself of how good I'm going to feel after. Plus, of course, I always had my food ready to eat. So that was a huge key to success for me. I mean, it literally was ready for me to go as they started in on eating what they wanted to eat, and I could join in on the deck and be part of the group. It was over in 15 minutes, and I felt so much better afterwards. Not only that, just physically, but emotionally, I really felt comforted, like I was giving myself an internal hug of safety and just building that trust relationship that will travel with me. I'm going out of town in a couple days, and I've really been working on that trust relationship that I will take care of me. I can be confident that I'm going to not have to worry about situations, that I can trust myself. But that friendly conversation with myself really pulls me out of the panic and reassures those inner fears that everything's going to be okay. That loving approach has worked for me. It's worked like a charm and made it so easy to get through those meals relaxed and focus on grandkids and families and connection and things like that. And I used to be so hard on myself, and that just has never worked out. I mean, I tried it enough to know so far that really hasn't been that effective. It doesn't stick around for long. So I've heard recently, if being hard doesn't work, try soft.
Mhm. Yep. So, and there's two things here that really matter, right? The first is comfort, right? And seeking being our own source of comfort, not seeking comfort in food or substances or sugary drinks or alcoholic beverages, not seeking comfort or peace or connection from those things, but seeking it,
Also,
from ourselves. And the other thing is making sure that you set yourself up with the right amount of nutrients and the right amount of food that will satisfy you, not only from a satisfy you physically, and physiologically, but also satisfy your macro and micronutrient needs. And we all know that pizza is not going to satisfy us from a macro or micronutrient needs, which is why we all tend to eat it until we can't eat anymore.
yeah.
Because there is no balance. I've never seen, no matter how healthy the pizza, I've never seen it really balance out a macro and micronutrient um, uh, goal for anyone. And that's just the way it's designed. It's sometimes food, it's party food, it's food that's it's not food. It's more of a something that's used as a tool at different events, but it's not meant to fill people up and to keep them truly nourished.
Mhm.
So I think that's important about, the two components that Paige just mentioned, being your own source of comfort and truly nourishing yourself in a calm, excuse me, a full macro and micro way.
Mhm.
So when we think about, how we can approach these foods that are truly addictive, and we know that create addictive responses in us. And again, it doesn't matter. You can put any kind of clothing on that. What's the phrase that they dress up.
Lipstick on a pig.
Yeah, lipstick on a pig. You could put any color lipstick on that pig. It's still a pig. And that's the same thing with these foods. We have to understand that these are addictive foods, and we have an addictive response or addiction-like behavior around these foods. So
Mhm.
it's best to realize that these foods are not truly food. They're not truly comfort. They are simply something that people use until they don't have any more room in their bodies for them. So once
Literally.
literally, that is it. That is the only time. I mean, truly, that is the only time anyone I know, including myself, is able to stop eating pizza. If they allow themselves to just relax and have pizza, they would
Yeah.
not be able to stop eating the pizza.
Yeah, because it's food our bodies weren't designed to
Right.
consume, so all those messages are muted.
So it's important just to understand the difference there. Again, what we think of as food is not, the way it's marketed, the way it's perpetuated in our society, and the way that it's even social and societal norms would tell us these foods are food, but they're not food. So it's
Mhm.
important for us to have that meaningful connection with ourselves and with others, to nourish ourselves the right way, and to make sure that we can know that foods that we have an addictive response to, our bodies are doing exactly what they were designed to do with the foods that were quote unquote foods that are put in front of us.
Mhm.
Having an addictive response, we have a hard time stopping ourselves from overeating, or just in general eating more of, or not being obsessed with these foods, because they have hyperpalatable chemically engineered ingredients in them that are hard to say no to. And this is something that, again, is something that I see again and again in people we work with, people, that I have known in my coaching practice outside of RFR, my own experience. This is just the way it is. I know that when it comes to certain foods, I am not able to moderate them. And it's not because I'm a bad person, and it's not because I had a rocky childhood, and it's not because it's usually a combination of I'm not comforting myself in a meaningful way, and I've not had my nutrient needs met that day in the appropriate way. So I'm going to overeat whatever that chemically laden food in front of me is.
Mhm. You're right, and I love it the talk about, those foods also create all these cravings. And one thing that I want to make sure that is pointed out, that these cravings aren't bad, they're signals. That's all they are. They're feedback. It's feedback, as I talked about earlier about how you call them dashboard lights. It's for us to pay attention to, and unfortunately, so often we're using these foods for comfort or stress relief, or it's, fun. I'm doing air quotes as fun, or moments of joy in a hectic day. And this is such great information, and so right on as we're talking about how we want to make the addiction our friend. Because I remember having a conversation about this several years ago with someone that I thought was a reliable source that was considered an expert in this field. And I remember them saying, I'm never going to be friends with my addiction. They were almost offended at the concept of this. They were very indignant with me. And Jamie really had my back on this conversation, because she had a chance to have a follow-up conversation with this person. And Jamie explained so well that she wanted to be friends with all these different parts of her and love on all of them and work in harmony within herself. Jamie did a much better job of explaining this to this person than I did. And I think she might have listened a little more closely. But I will tell you, from the first time I heard about this concept, I knew instantly that had to be right, because it made so much sense. It just was, it was undeniable, the common sense that sounded to me. And it was a very calming approach to know there was a different way to go about this than just the harshness that I had always heard. Like, go, when the addiction comes on, you tell it, go to your room and you leave me alone, and you talk, with gritted teeth. And this, it fits my personality better, and it just is more inviting to have that comforting in your chest than that friction going on all the time. And I know cravings aren't normal, and I had learned that, but I also knew they didn't feel right on the inside, and they only come on when something is off. And like I said, I had really only ever heard to talk harshly to this addiction, scold it till it left you alone, like a misbehaving child. And as I mentioned before, it really never worked. But working in harmony puts all parts of us at ease. And before, I never really looked at my cravings with curiosity either. This opened up a whole new world of thinking,
Yeah.
because I actually wanted to know what was going on with me intentionally. Before, when I was being harsh and mean, I wasn't questioning. I was just trying to bully my way through the moment. I wasn't asking myself questions to find out about what was bothering me. I wasn't getting to the root cause of the problem. I was just trying to force my way through the moment with the least amount of calorie damage because I was still, that was my main focus. How many calories can I minimally survive on in a day and get by with? Because I knew a binge was coming. So I needed to cut back to counterbalance, the binge that would come a few times a month. So really white knuckling was all I was doing. And it was very painful each time it happened. And I was in terror of these binge cycles coming back. It felt like
Oh,
this
yeah.
monster hiding in the closet, just waiting to jump out and get me, which that sounds so dramatic, but I actually considered each one of these episodes as small T traumas because I was completely out of control. It was happening to me. I was in the fetal position. It was painful mentally, physically, spiritually. So I was extremely grateful. I think that's why I'm so excited about this topic because I was so grateful to discover a new way of thinking around this. And I don't have to fear that air quotes boogeyman coming to get me anymore. Jamie, do you think that this line of thinking has changed over the years from where you started to where you are now? Do you feel like this is a better approach? I mean, did you have that harsh initially? Was it the talking mean to the addiction, or did
Yes.
you always know the gentle approach?
Oh, I wasn't talking, I didn't know I was talking to anything, an addiction. I just thought I was talking to me. I thought there was something wrong with me. So that, and
Uh-huh.
this is why I'm so vocal about not using that word, calling people addicts, right? If they want to refer to themselves like Paige does, if you want to refer to yourself that way, that's absolutely her right. But for me, I feel like it's a slippery slope, and it can be a very harmful, way to refer to ourselves if um I think if because it's more nuanced than black and white, addict, not addict. I have addictive behaviors around certain foods, and I have non-addictive behaviors around other foods and drinks. Uh,
Mhm.
and it changes. I think it changes over time. So for me, I'm very careful with how I speak to myself after years of not being that way.
Mhm.
I learned a lot of lessons about I never, like Paige said earlier, I never got better calling myself names. I just never got better. And for me, that includes the name addict.
Mm.
It never made me better. It just made me feel like I was broken or if there was something wrong with me. So I
Mhm.
prefer to just remind myself that I have an addictive response around those foods. And there are some
Yeah.
foods that I don't even consider foods anymore.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
that I just don't, they're off the table, like, sodas, fast food, like, I'm like, that's not even food. Like, that's so chemically laden junk. I don't even consider that food. So I don't even have to think about addictive responses to it because I don't even consider them food. And there are certain things that I haven't ever had that I know I would have an addictive response to. Heroin, all street drugs. Like,
Yeah.
I've never had any of them, but I know I would have an addictive response to them, and I don't consider
Yeah.
them anything that I
Me
would even
too.
interact with.
Yeah.
So when I think about your, IFS, internal family systems, and the healing that this brought me, this was essentially this mindset I have about, the addictive behaviors, addictive responses versus labeling myself came out of my work with my, my inner family, and being able to love all parts of me and being able to accept all parts of me, even the parts of me that couldn't control herself around these foods. Because when I would condemn those parts or shame those parts or um, push those parts away from me, so, energetically, so to speak, all it would do would make them act out more,
Yeah.
make them get louder and louder because they felt like they were
Mhm.
being more and more
Ignored.
ignored, yeah, and really just um, labeled in a negative way. And when I realized that being um, accepting and loving of them, and looking at these parts of me, just like I look at others now around these foods, as they're not bad people or weak or hopeless. They are just people that have not accepted the fact that these foods really are nothing that can be moderated for them.
Mhm.
And they just haven't gotten there yet. We
Mhm.
have a person that Paige and I work with, and this person, they try again and again to moderate a certain group of foods, and they just can't.
Mhm.
And this shows up 100 different ways, but it's always related to this particular, sort of label of drink. And this person cannot moderate, and knows it and sees it again and again and again and again. But where the issue is, they have not accepted that they can't have this thing in their life.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
they grasp at straws, and they try to spin it 15 different ways. And all it is them not being in acceptance of not being able to have this thing.
Mhm.
And I believe that when you are in acceptance, and some people call it abstinence, when you are in acceptance of the fact that certain foods, drinks, chemicals, additives cannot be moderated and should not be consumed at all, then I think it's a much more freeing place to be. I know some call it abstinence, I call it acceptance. And my job in working with my inner family was to help myself, my loving adult self, accept all those parts of me that could not accept the fact that they could not have those foods.
Mhm.
And then I was able to like get down to helping them see and understand why they could not have foods those foods, why they could not moderate them, that there was nothing wrong with them, that they were acting exactly the way the food companies designed them to act, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate your conversation about labeling ourselves. I um do think I have a sugar addiction, but that's not who I am. So yes, I tongue in cheek call myself a sugar addict, but I am wise enough to know that's not who I am. That's just something I have. So I just wanted to make that distinction, but I do like also labeling it in a way that just says we have an addictive response to sugar or ultra processed foods. Whatever is comfortable for you, but I do love that conversation and for people to take a look at where
Yeah.
they are with that. We know that in IFS that those addictive behaviors are often seen as protectors. These parts develop as coping mechanisms to protect us from those deeper emotional pains and unresolved trauma, which is so typical for people to just shove it down, shove it down, shove it down. Easier that way, or that's what you think anyway. It's easier, shove it down, move on. But the addiction serves as a purpose, such as numbing uncomfortable emotions, distracting us from pain, or just simply providing temporary relief. I know that IFS encourages this non-judgmental, curious approach to understanding the addictive part. And instead of criticizing or shaming yourself for the behavior, you get the opportunity to explore what that part is trying to protect you from and what does it actually need. It believes that at our core, we have this self that's compassionate, wise, and capable of leading this internal system that we have going on. And through this self leadership, by the way, I love that phrase self leadership. If you think about these internal parts, you're self leading them to a better place. You can engage
Sure.
with that addictive part and understand its role and help it to find these healthier ways to meet its needs. I feel like I implemented that self-leadership with my pizza story. I was in charge of
Mhm.
leading myself to safety. That was so empowering. That felt so good. And I was able to be my best self the entire time, not a nervous, panicked wreck. And I had so much exponentially more joy than if I had just been trying to white knuckle it through that experience. And so it goes back to making your addiction your friend. I was able to befriend a sacred part of me and play nice with the part I wanted to protect myself from. And I let the addiction know that I had it taken care of and I didn't need protecting anymore. They can go off and do whatever they want to do, but I'm fine. I've got this.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what Paige is saying, right? The goal is not to suppress or fight the addiction, but the goal is really to heal underlying wounds that the addictive behaviors that we have are trying to protect. And again, it's around the foods that we're talking about, right? So it is much easier to have a connection, a deeper connection to self when we're not being triggered by addictive foods.
Sure.
So again, it's very hard to try to protect ourselves around addictive foods.
Yeah.
So when we take out the addictive foods or foods that we have addictive responses with, and again, it might be true for us and it might not be true for others, right? So everyone is their own person. What addictive foods are for you might not be addictive foods for your partner, your friend, your parent, your child. So it's important to understand that when those addictive foods are around, we have a hard time. There might be for us a hard time controlling.
Yeah.
Or and again, it's if we look at these underlying beliefs that we have, underlying hurts or hangups that we have, we might have falsely, especially as young adults or adolescents or children, we might have falsely associated comfort to food because it was either taught to us, we observed it, we saw it modeled, it was part of our familial celebrations, whatever. We've associated food and comfort. So we associate needing comfort with needing food. And this is very deeply ingrained. It was deeply ingrained in me. But it's important to understand that there is something to be healed under there. That food cannot, no food, no drink, no substance can do.
Never.
And again, that's when we're able to see that, when we're able to truly connect with those needs that we have and start to heal some of those wounds that we have, then that's where we can truly have food be food. So internal family systems or inner family work really seeks to bring balance to those parts of us. And that balance can come in the fact of helping us, again, learn those old false beliefs we have, make friends with those old wounds, make friends with those parts of us that we've been rejecting for so long. And again, that can help us have a healthier relationship with ourselves so that we can navigate the food landscape that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's again, it's not about the food, it's about having the connection with ourselves so that we can navigate whatever life gives us. Junk food, loss of loved ones, stressful days at work, and everything in between. So again, we want to help these parts shift from these extreme roles that they've kept and trying to protect us or trying to limit us, and trying to sort of shift them into a more balanced place of connection with ourselves so that we don't have to keep seeking those comforting behaviors from outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's really where, again, how do we do this successfully? Paige, I'll turn that over to you.
Yeah. So that's the big question is, so what? So what do we do now? So we start by listening to the addicted part, as we've been talking about. Just start by listening. And that what the big concept for me was, oh, we can have a communication with the addictive part. We can talk to that part. I mean, mind blown. That when I first heard that, I that was new to me. So we can start by having a conversation with the addicted part. We can understand its concerns and needs without judgment, big emphasis on that, and literally talking to that part and asking, what do you need? And I like that. For those that you can see me, you kind of give yourself a little hug and pat your shoulders. What are you needing right now? Ask it, what does it need? It helps to recognize that the addiction developed as a way to cope with difficult emotions and experiences. So let the addicted part of you know that you're capable of leading and addressing these underlying issues. Then we can start to work with that part of us to explore healthier ways to meet its needs once it feels safe and is able to let go of that addictive behavior. So by befriending the addicted part, you transform your relationship with it. That's the key sentence, is that once you become a friend with any friend, your relationship starts to change and it moves from a place of conflict to one of understanding and healing. And through this process, you end up making a trusted friend.
Yes. Beautiful. Beautiful. It's so important,
It
and
is
that's
beautiful.
absolutely what's worked for me. And when I think about cravings, if I have them at this point, I'm very careful to pause and say, okay, this isn't really hunger. This isn't true hunger. So what am I really
Yeah.
need? And sometimes it is physiological. Sometimes it's okay, I'm not hungry, I'm thirsty. And sometimes
Hmm.
it really is true hunger. And sometimes it's just discomfort with where I am, or not wanting to do something, or not wanting to buckle down and spend the time doing something for work or personally. And it could just be boredom or stress or being lonely or being tired. So again, getting to the root of the craving really helps you address it in a healthier way and separate cravings from food. And there's some schools of thought, and I am pretty sure I agree. I never really thought about it this way, but their point is, anytime anyone is even snacking in between a meal,
Yeah.
there's schools of thought that that is a total emotional experience.
Mm.
That there is nothing physiological or biological about snacking. It is simply because there was not enough eaten at the meal prior, and not enough, and maybe too much time to that next meal. And that's something that I've learned for me in the last, I'd say, month or two. I have learned that I just really need to bring my meal times closer together. So I was trying to wait, 5, 6 hours in between meals, not because I was trying to do that, because I had some belief around timing. It was more just like that's when it fit into the schedule.
Hmm.
And then I was like, okay, I'm getting hungry earlier than I have convenience for. So I thought, okay, I need to do one or two things. I need to either move some things around beforehand, and I can't physically eat more than I do. So, okay, well, then I don't want to go into my last meal of the day super hungry, because that's not going to end well. So I make sure that I just move up my meal.
Yeah.
Move up my meal, and I make sure that I am eating enough at that meal to get me through until, the next time I eat the next day. So
Yeah.
it's it moves, it changes, and it moves and changes depending on the season of life you're in. I mean, for me, there was a time where I had to have 3 meals and 2 snacks, but I'm not in that season of life at this time. So I just really try to look at, if I'm craving food and I know I'm not physiologically hungry, then what is really going on for me?
Yeah. Smart. Smart. I do 5 small meals because I can't eat too much. I get problems with gastric reflux. So
Okay, yeah, there you
I
go.
just like your point about everybody's got to figure out timing for meals, and that works good for me emotionally too. So anyway, something else to note, it's typical to label foods good or bad. I've been trying to view them just more of different choices that serve different purposes. Sometimes I tell myself, you know what, you can have that if you want, but do you really want to have that? And because I know how it works out in the end, and it would end up hurting me. And I feel so much better afterwards if I don't eat the tempting food. And guess what? I've never regretted that. I never left that and gone, gosh, I wish I would have gone ahead and eaten the cheeseburger or the cookie. But my future self always thanks me when I take care of myself. But the key is to be mindful and intentional about my choices rather than acting on autopilot. But it
Mhm.
really takes the pressure off if I feel like I have a choice. So if I don't keep those foods in my house and around me, that's a tremendous help as well. And it
Yeah.
takes away the negotiating, especially in the evenings when I might feel wobbly. But I do like saying to myself, if you want it, you can have it. But you know what? I don't want that. It just takes the pressure off for me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, black and white thinking about it never helps. And
Mhm.
again, I think it's important for us to think about this as a spectrum. So addiction addictive responses uh, can fall on a spectrum. We can have a really, really hyper addictive response to certain things, like For me, it would be anything baked good related. I have a hyper addictive response. Once I have it, I can't stop thinking about it. And I
Right.
certainly can't stop myself from eating more and more if they're available to me. And if there's no immediate downfall to eating it, I would just keep eating until I
Those
couldn't.
gone. Mm-hmm.
Um, because the downfalls happen after the consumption, right? They don't happen during it.
Yes.
Uh, and which is the problem, which is the whole problem with
Yeah.
food. That.
Right.
Uh, so again, if it's a spectrum, we know we're on one side of the spectrum and maybe extreme responses. Well, we're on the other side of the spectrum as far as how we heal and how we take our steps through recovery. So it helps to know that we're not going to go from 0 to 100. We didn't
Mm-hmm.
fall into addictive patterns and behaviors around food overnight. Although I believe that some foods, the way they're manufactured, can create them overnight.
Mm-hmm.
But as we grew up, we learned these things about ourselves. We learned that there are certain foods that we really can't moderate. We learned that there are certain foods that we really feel horrible when we eat them, or that we feel great when we eat them in a healthful way, in a truly healthful way. It's not a momentary high, it's true long term. I feel energetically balanced when I eat this food.
Mm-hmm.
So again, if we look at this as a spectrum, we pick up these learnings and we move, over from one side of totally lost it around food and can't control my addictive responses, to understanding them, to accepting them, to acting on them, right? Or not acting on them, depending on what it is. So you don't have to do things overnight. We didn't
Mm-hmm.
get to this, we didn't get to this place overnight, and we're not going to get out of this place overnight. So we have to just introduce these sort of small baby steps, and look at what we can do to, if there's truth, we know that there's foods that we truly cannot moderate, cannot have, without forcing ourselves to stop, or without constantly thinking of them, right? These are foods that probably have we have an addictive response to, or have addictive ingredients in them. Then we have to stop and say, okay, what is an alternative here? Um,
Mm-hmm.
I would say accepting that these foods just aren't moderatable for us. We're not able to have a non-addictive response to them. And then looking at, okay, what are my other options? And yes, there's other overlays to that of, am I really hungry? What's going on for me today? But sometimes when you're in the thick of it, you're not going to stop and think about the emotional
Mm-hmm.
downfall, or unpacking your
Mm-hmm.
feeling. You're going to think about, okay, I know I have an addictive response to that food, but what food, I'm not in the place to not have a food right now. So what food could I choose that would be lower on the addictive response scale?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think something else that is helpful is to celebrate these wins. Every small step you take towards a healthier relationship with food is really a victory. Celebrating these wins, no matter how small they seem, that stop and acknowledge yourself for the hard work, and over time these small changes will add up and your cravings for ultra processed foods will start to diminish. I have sometimes been able to see at year markers how I'm doing. For instance, on annual trips I take, or the holidays, I'm able to pivot and look backwards and say, oh, I am doing better than I was a year ago. And when I travel, I now try to pay attention to if I'm making progress with that nervous hunger, because that always gets me in the airports and things like that, or long drives. And I try to keep new approaches to help myself keep getting better and better, like, saving a Netflix series that I'm wanting to watch, or bringing a travel pillow to take a nap. Sometimes just taking a nap, on a long car ride or on the plane helps.
Yeah.
A
Game
book you've
changer.
been wanting, what's that?
Game changer.
Yeah, or a book you've been wanting to catch up on. Anything to keep my mind busy is what helps me. And I try to make it something that I'm really looking forward to doing or listening to. And I always bring my own food whenever I'm traveling the best I can. In fact, we're leaving in a couple days from now, and my stepson just texts to say, okay, what foods do I need to have here? And I realize a lot of good portion of my day I already have planned to take with me. So I'm just supplementing with a few extra things. And I know I'll have to go out for at least one meal, but definitely I plan that out very far in advance.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a game changer. Again, when we think about what else helps, we think about support, right? Supportive environment's a big help. Surrounding yourself with healthier options. Um, but it certainly is a good step, but really healthier people, right? So if we
Yeah,
think about having
totally.
that support around us, yes, we want to have options that food options that we don't have addictive responses to, that make us feel really good about the choices and the way that we feel after we eat those foods. But again, you want to be um, focused on accessibility to support of non-addictive foods and support of people that are also choosing non-addictive foods.
Yeah.
You could have the best environment and the best setup in your own mind that keeps you safe, but if you're keeping company with people that are constantly eating addictive foods and choosing to go out and do recreational things with foods, like their idea of a good time is going out to a new restaurant, those are not your people, right?
It's
And
contagious.
yeah, and you will fail at some point or another by ordering something or eating something you know that it creates an addictive response in you. So
Hmm.
it's important to be mindful about your environment and also the people that you surround yourself with.
I
Um,
agree.
yeah, I'm very careful with how I manage my home. And separate refrigerator for my husband and I, away from the other members of the family in the house. We even have separate cabinets for different things. I don't
Mhm.
actually keep things that are in a cabinet, so it's actually convenient for me at this point.
Yeah.
But moving forward, that's where I am today with my health journey. Moving forward, I may get back to a point where I have things in a cabinet, but right now I don't, and it has been really all about just managing the supply in the refrigerator and making sure, or the freezer, and making sure that I have on hand these nutritious options, because going out isn't really an option for me. And if I do, I have to be really careful about what I eat and how I eat it.
Hmm. Yeah. You know, another thing that's really been effective in maintaining a state of peace for Jamie and I both is finding joy in movement. And I'm not talking about going and killing yourself at the gym, just movement. It can be so gentle, but just moving our physical bodies is so helpful. Any level of activity can be a powerful tool in managing cravings and improving that overall sense of well-being. Finding a form of movement that you enjoy, whether it's dancing, walking, yoga, or anything that gets you moving, is perfect. The goal is to make movement a joyful part of your routine, not a punishment. This is so near and dear to my heart that I try to do some type of movement every day. And again, I'm not out there killing myself every single day, just some type of movement just keeps all these joints lubricated.
Yeah.
It's such a natural high and gives me that lovely little dopamine bump that sticks with me for hours. And to make working out even more enjoyable, I try to set goals that I can work towards and do it with friends. That's the type of vacation that I like to take. It's what Jamie was talking about, the type of people you want to hang out with. I like to hang out with people that are doing my same type of movement goals too, and join together with them. That's my socialization, is what I'm trying to say. So if you like to walk with friends in the morning or meet at the gym or play pickleball, you get the drift. But you're just more likely to show up and stay consistent if someone
Right.
is counting on you being there. For instance, I put my weekly tennis game on Fridays, so I have that to look forward to as a reward for my week's worth of movement.
Yeah, absolutely. So connecting with others is also high on my list of self-care, and that's where that whole support theme comes back into play. Remembering that we're not alone on this journey, reaching out to others who are going through the same struggles. Again, whether it's support groups formally, like Real Food Recovery, or online communities that really are just meeting places for people. friends, family, sharing your experiences and challenges can help you feel supported and less isolated. And that's something that's worked for me. But again, you have to be careful with who you surround yourself with.
Mm-hmm.
Surrounding yourself with people who eat recreationally,
Mm-hmm.
you will need to make some choices about how you spend your time with them and what you
Yeah.
do. There's people in my life that I love dearly, and they're non-blood family. And whenever they invite me to a restaurant, I'll always offer another option of let's get together and play cards, or let's get together at
Mm-hmm.
so-and-so's house and do this. There's, play a game, something, spend time
Mm-hmm.
outside as soon as it's not 1,000 degrees here. Like there are ways to do it where, you can enjoy your company without it being around food. And if these people in your life truly value you, they will totally understand, and they will flex to accommodate your needs. They
Yeah,
won't
I
make
agree.
make a example of you,
Yeah,
or
I
make
agree.
you feel ashamed for asking and protecting yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So again, just giving the loving approach, right? To yourself, to others. And that's really, I think, that the biggest way that we can succeed in when it comes to making friends with our addictive behaviors.
Agree. Agree. Do we have time to do these listener questions real
Take
fast?
a couple of them, yeah.
Okay, let's get started. When my cravings come on, they are so powerful, they really don't feel like my friend. It feels like they are attacking me, so it's hard to think of them any other way. I get it. We understand. This is when it's a good idea to do some work in advance, have a plan in mind for when these hit, and also set yourself up for success as far as your food, your sleep, your spirituality, your movement, and stress, and see if you're able to ward off a lot of these incidents in advance. So lastly, practice makes perfect. So start trying some calming practices. I love the putting the hands on your cheeks and repeating 3 times, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay. That is extremely effective. That's very compassionate and it works like a charm. So letting the addiction know there's no danger present helps a lot. You might also ask yourself in advance if there are specific emotions or situations that trigger them so you can be prepared.
Yeah. Second question is, I often find myself reaching out for these ultra processed foods when I'm not physically hungry. What might be the craving here? Might I be seeking? I would say that is a question that you need to sit down and ask yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what are you truly hungry for? And again, yes, it could be emotional, it could be physiological, like you might be tired, you might be thirsty, you might be overscheduled and not having any, time for yourself. But it also might be that you don't have enough nutrients on board in your body.
Mm-hmm.
Your body really is, it's not hungry, but it is craving something because it needs
Yeah.
some kind of nutrients. So again, making sure that you're eating from the full spectrum of foods that are nutrient dense is important. And I don't know any processed packaged food that is nutrient dense. I just don't. So 90% of them are not nutrient dense foods. So it's important to look at what you are eating when you're eating, and what those when they're coming on, the cravings and what they're trying to tell you. Because yes, for sure it could be emotional, but it could also be where you really are lacking something.
Yeah. Okay, where do I even start in this process of making the addiction my friend? I would not have a clue where to begin. I understand that too. It can be overwhelming. So start small. Think of what is one thing that you can do today to progress your recovery journey, saying kind things to yourself in the morning about how loved you are and there is nothing to be afraid of because your inner self is safe with you. Think of a mantra to repeat during the day that's calming to yourself. So self-talk goes a long way and it's the gift that keeps on giving. You can choose where you want to start. If you want to start with the food, start with the food. If you want to just start with self-talk, start with that. Just think of something to do today that you can get moving.
Well, that's all we have time for today, Paige. Anything you want to say to wrap up?
No, I just love this topic and thank you so much. And thank you to all those who are listening. And if you want to find out more about us, you can find us at realfoodrecovery4u.com. That's the number 4 and the letter U, realfoodrecovery4u.com. And we hope to see you there. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks.